The ballroom felt too bright for him the moment he stepped inside. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, reflecting off polished floors and glass walls. Everything shined. Every sound echoed softly, from expensive shoes tapping the floor to low conversations filled with confidence. He paused near the entrance, holding the invitation card again, just to be sure he was in the right place. He adjusted his jacket, one he had owned for years. It was clean and pressed, but it had seen many days of work and many long nights. He took a slow breath and walked forward. No one noticed him at first, and that was fine. He did not come to be noticed. He was a single father. His life ran on early mornings and late nights. Every day began before sunrise. He packed lunches, checked homework, fixed small things around the house, then rushed to work. His daughter was the center of everything. Every choice he made started and ended with her. Tonight was different. He had almost not come. The invitation arrived weeks earlier through a local community group. It was for a charity gala supporting education programs for children who needed help. He had volunteered with that group before, helping organize small events, carrying chairs, setting up tables, delivering food. He never asked for anything in return. When they offered him an invitation, he thought it was a mistake. He stood in his small kitchen that night, holding the envelope, unsure. His daughter sat at the table, coloring carefully between the lines. She looked up and smiled when she saw his face. "You should go," she had said. "You help people. That's what you do." Her words stayed with him. So here he was. Around him were people who looked like they belonged. Men in sharp suits, women in elegant dresses. Laughter came easily to them. They spoke about investments, companies, travel, and numbers that sounded unreal to him. He listened quietly as he moved toward the side of the room. A waiter passed by with a tray of drinks. He declined politely. He did not drink. He needed to stay clear-headed. Old habits from long work days and responsibility stayed with him. He stood near a tall table and watched. He noticed small things others didn't. A woman checking her phone every few seconds. A man laughing too loudly. A couple arguing in whispers. Behind all the shine, he saw stress, pride, and fear. It reminded him that everyone carried something. Across the room, the host moved from group to group. The billionaire. He was hard to miss. Confident walk. Relaxed smile. People leaned in when he spoke. Cameras followed him quietly. This was his world. He built companies, made bold decisions, and was praised for his sharp mind. Tonight, he was not just a businessman. He was the center of attention. The single father watched him from a distance. He felt no anger, no envy, just curiosity. He wondered what a life like that felt like. Then he thought of his daughter waiting at home, probably already asleep, her school bag ready by the door. His chest warmed. Someone brushed past him and barely noticed. Another guest glanced at his shoes, then away. He felt the look. He had felt it many times before. On buses, in offices, at school meetings where others arrived in expensive cars. He had learned not to shrink under it. He stood straight. A woman nearby started a conversation with him, asking if he worked with a charity. He nodded and explained briefly. She smiled politely, but her attention drifted quickly when someone else called her name. She walked away mid-sentence. He didn't mind. Time passed slowly. Music played softly. Glasses clinked. Speeches were expected later in the night. Then, unexpectedly, the billionaire walked toward him. At first, the father thought it was coincidence, but the man stopped in front of him and extended his hand. "Good evening," the billionaire said, smiling. "I don't think we've met." The father shook his hand. The grip was firm but casual. "No, we haven't," he replied. "Thank you for hosting this." The billionaire nodded, glancing at him with interest. "Are you with one of the sponsors?" "No," the father said calmly. "I was invited to the community program." "Oh," the billionaire said, eyebrows lifting slightly. "And what do you do?" It was a simple question. The father had answered it many times before. "I work as a delivery driver during the day," he said. "At night, I do maintenance work. I also help with local events when I can." The billionaire smiled, but it was a kind of smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. "That's a lot of work," he said. Still grinding, huh? The word landed softly, but it carried weight. I have a daughter, the father replied. She depends on me. A few people nearby started listening. Conversation slowed. The billionaire nodded again. That's admirable, he said, then added lightly. But don't you ever wish you aimed higher? The father looked at him, not confused, not offended, just attentive. I aim exactly where I need to, he said. The billionaire chuckled, glancing around as if sharing a joke. Hard work is great, he continued, but mindset is everything. Some people work hard their whole lives and never move forward. It's about thinking big. A couple of guests laughed quietly. Others watched with interest. The father felt a familiar pressure in his chest, the moment where many people would defend themselves, explain their struggles, list their sacrifices. He didn't. He had learned something over the years. Not every moment required a reply, but some did. He listened. The billionaire kept talking, unaware of the shift happening in the room. You know, he said, anyone can work long hours, but success comes to those who take risks, who refuse to stay average. The word average hung in the air. The father noticed a servant nearby pause. He noticed a woman frown slightly. He noticed his own heartbeat slow instead of speed up. He thought of the nights he sat beside his daughter's bed when she was sick, the mornings he practiced spelling words with her before school, the times he turned down better-paying jobs because they would keep him away from her too long. Average. He looked at the billionaire, still calm. The music continued playing softly. Glasses rested on tables. People waited. For the first time that evening, the room wasn't focused on money or power. It was waiting for a man in an old jacket to speak. The silence felt heavier than the music. People around the table stopped pretending not to listen. Even those a few steps away sensed something was happening. The single father stood still, hands relaxed at his sides. He did not rush his thoughts. He had learned patience from years of waiting in hospital rooms, school offices, and long work lines. The billionaire tilted his head slightly, as if expecting the father to agree or laugh it off. When no reaction came, he spoke again, filling the quiet. Don't get me wrong, he said, smiling. I respect hard workers, but effort without ambition doesn't change much. You can work forever and still stay in the same place. A few heads nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. The father noticed the small reactions. He always did. At parent meetings, he could tell which teachers listened and which didn't. At work, he could tell when a supervisor had already made up their mind. Right now, he could tell the room was split. He took a slow breath. I don't think staying in the same place is always a bad thing, he said quietly. The billionaire raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Yes, the father replied. Some places matter. A woman standing nearby shifted her weight. A man cleared his throat. The conversation had grown larger than the two of them now. The billionaire laughed softly. That's an interesting way to look at it. The father nodded once. It comes from experience. What kind of experience? The billionaire asked. Raising a child alone, the father said. That word, alone, changed something. The billionaire paused for a moment, then shrugged. That can't be easy, he said, almost casually. But don't you want more for her? More comfort? More security? I want enough, the father answered. The billionaire smiled again, but this time there was a slight edge to it. Enough is a dangerous word, he said. It keeps people from pushing further. The father looked at him carefully. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He was trying to understand. Sometimes pushing further means pushing away, he said. A murmur passed through the nearby guests. The billionaire folded his arms lightly. You think ambition is a bad thing? No, the father said. I think ambition without balance can cost more than people realize. The billionaire glanced around, aware now that more eyes were on him. He straightened his posture. Balance doesn't build companies, he said. Neither does neglect, the father replied, still calm. A sharp silence followed. Someone laughed nervously. Another guest pretended to check their phone. The father could feel his heart beating steadily. He remembered the night his daughter asked him why he never came home early like other parents. He remembered the promise he made to himself after that. The billionaire leaned slightly closer. So you're saying you chose an ordinary life? The father shook his head slowly. No, I chose a meaningful one. That word landed differently. The billionaire opened his mouth, then closed it. He had spent years controlling rooms with words. This room was slipping from that control. Meaning doesn't pay bills, he said finally. The father smiled gently. It helps decide which bills are worth paying. A quiet gasp came from somewhere behind them. The billionaire let out a short laugh, though it sounded forced now. You're a good talker, he said. But reality is simple. Money creates freedom. It can, the father agreed, but it can also create distance. The billionaire looked at him sharply. Distance from what? From moments you don't get back, the father said. The room felt warmer. Or maybe it was just the tension. The father continued, not louder, not faster, but steadier. When my daughter was younger, he said, she used to wait by the door every evening. If I was late, she'd fall asleep there sometimes. I realized then that no amount of money would make that okay. The billionaire frowned slightly. This was no longer a debate about ideas. It was personal. You're assuming people like me don't care about family, he said. I didn't say that, the father replied. I said we all pay for our choices, just in different ways. Another pause. The billionaire glanced at the people around them. Some avoided his eyes. Others watched closely. You know, he said, lowering his voice, if you had thought bigger earlier, you might not be working 2 jobs now. The words were meant to sound helpful. They didn't. The father felt the sting this time, not for himself, but for the many people he knew who worked hard and were still struggling. People who showed up anyway. People who loved deeply. He inhaled slowly. Or he said, I might have missed bedtime stories, school plays, first bike rides. The billionaire scoffed lightly. Those are memories, he said, not achievements. The father looked him straight in the eyes. To my daughter, he said, they're everything. The room went quiet again. Even the music seemed distant. A woman nearby wiped her eye quickly and looked away. A man nodded to himself. The billionaire shifted his stance. For the first time, he seemed unsure. You really believe that's enough? He asked. The father thought for a moment, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he wanted to say it right. I believe, he said, that success isn't measured by how many people know your name, but by how many people feel safe when they say it. No one spoke. The billionaire stared at him, speechless for a brief second. He had expected defensiveness, maybe gratitude. He hadn't expected this. The father felt the weight of the room pressing in. He didn't want to embarrass anyone. He didn't want attention. I didn't come here to make a point, he added softly. I came to support children who need help, just like mine once did. The billionaire exhaled slowly. He glanced down at his glass, then back up. Well, he said, try to regain his tone. That's one way to look at life. The father nodded. It's the only way I know. A moment passed, then another. Somewhere across the room, someone began clapping. Quietly, one pair of hands. Then another. The father felt his face warm. He didn't look around. He simply stood there, grounded, thinking of his daughter's smile. The billionaire forced a smile and raised his glass slightly, signaling the end of the exchange. But the room had already changed. Conversations restarted, but they sounded different now. Softer, more thoughtful. The father stepped back from the table, giving space. He felt tired, but steady. He had spoken his truth, nothing more. As he moved toward the edge of the room, he didn't notice the phone held discreetly by someone nearby, recording the last moments. He also didn't notice that the billionaire watched him go longer than expected, with a look that was no longer confident. Outside the ballroom doors, the father paused, resting his hand on the cool wall. He took a breath and checked his phone. There was a message from his daughter. Did you get there safe? He smiled. Yes, he typed back, and I'll be home soon. The applause faded, but the feeling it left behind stayed in the air. The single father stood near the edge of the room, unsure what to do next. He hadn't planned to speak that much. He hadn't planned anything at all. He had only answered honestly. He checked his phone again. No new messages. He imagined his daughter brushing her teeth, probably reminding the neighbor not to forget the nightlight. The thought made him smile. Behind him, the ballroom slowly returned to its rhythm. Conversations restarted, but they felt different now. People spoke with more care. A few glanced in his direction, then looked away, unsure whether to approach. He decided to step outside for a moment. The hallway beyond the ballroom was quieter, cooler. The noise dropped to a soft hum. He leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. His shoulders relaxed for the first time that night. He wasn't shaking, but he felt the release. Years of holding things and finally letting out a small crack. He remembered another hallway. Years ago. White walls. Harsh lights. A doctor explaining things slowly, carefully. He remembered nodding, not fully hearing the words, only understanding the end of them. He remembered holding his wife's hand and promising her he would be enough. He had kept that promise. A door opened behind him. Footsteps approached. I wanted to say something. He turned. It was a woman from earlier, the one who had started to speak to him near the table. Her eyes looked tired, but kind. You said things I needed to hear, she continued. Thank you. He nodded. I didn't mean to make things awkward. She smiled. Sometimes awkward is honest. She wished him a good night and walked away. He watched her go, then looked back at his phone. Another message appeared. I can't sleep, his daughter wrote. Can you come home soon? He typed back immediately. I'm on my way. He slipped the phone into his pocket and turned toward the ballroom doors. As he reached for the handle, someone called out behind him. Wait! He turned again. The billionaire stood there. No crowd around him now. No cameras. Just a man in an expensive suit, looking less certain than before. I wasn't finished, the billionaire said. The father studied him for a moment. He wasn't sure what to expect. Another comment, an apology, a defense. I don't want trouble, the father said calmly. I was about to leave. I know, the billionaire replied. That's why I stopped you. They stood there in the quiet hallway, the space between them feeling smaller than before. You spoke with confidence, the billionaire said. Most people don't, especially not in rooms like this. The father shrugged. I'm used to speaking up when it matters. The billionaire exhaled. You made me sound like a villain in my own event. That wasn't my intention, the father said. I didn't attack you. No, the billionaire admitted. You didn't. You did something worse. You made people think. The father didn't respond. He had learned that silence sometimes worked better than explanations. The billionaire looked down the hallway, then back at him. Do you really believe all that? He asked. About success? I live it, the father said. Every day. The billionaire nodded slowly. I built everything I have by pushing, by never stopping. And what did it cost? The father asked, not accusing, just asking. The billionaire stiffened slightly. That's a personal question. So was mine, the father replied gently. A moment passed. I missed a lot, the billionaire said quietly. Birthdays, dinners, vacations. The father listened. I told myself it was temporary. The billionaire continued. That once I reached a certain point, I'd slow down. And did you? The billionaire didn't answer right away. No, he said finally. The hallway felt heavier now, not tense, but honest. I didn't mean to insult you earlier, the billionaire said. It just came out wrong. The father nodded. Words do that sometimes. The billionaire gave a small, uncomfortable smile. You don't seem angry. I don't have the energy for that, the father said. I have someone waiting for me at home. Something shifted in the billionaire's face. You're going home now, he asked. Yes. In the middle of the event? My daughter can't sleep, the father said simply. The billionaire looked surprised. You'd leave this? The father glanced back toward the ballroom. It's just a room. The billionaire said nothing. They stood there a few seconds longer. Then the father reached for the door again. Wait. The billionaire said once more. Can I ask you something? The father turned. If you had the chance, the billionaire asked, to trade places with me, would you? The father thought carefully. Not long, but carefully. No, he said. The billionaire blinked. Not even for security? The freedom? I have freedom, the father replied. It just looks different. He opened the door. Warm air from the ballroom rushed out, along with voices and music. Before stepping through, he looked back. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said. Then he walked away. The billionaire stayed in the hallway long after the door closed. Inside the ballroom, someone approached him, asking if he was ready to continue the program. He nodded, but his attention drifted. He kept seeing the father's calm face, kept hearing his words. Later that night, after speeches and photos, the billionaire returned home to a quiet house. He poured himself a drink, then stopped. He set the glass down untouched. He walked past framed awards and headlines on the wall. Success stories. Milestones. He stopped at one photo. An old one. A small child on his shoulders, both of them laughing. He couldn't remember the day, only that it existed. Meanwhile, across town, the father unlocked his front door quietly. He stepped inside and closed it softly behind him. The lights were dim. The house smelled familiar. Safe. He walked to his daughter's room and peeked inside. She was asleep now, curled on her side, one arm hugging her pillow. The nightlight glowed softly. He stood there for a long moment. He hadn't won anything tonight. No money, no connections, no praise that would change his life. But as he pulled the blanket gently up to his daughter's shoulders, he felt rich in a way he couldn't explain. His phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. "Thank you for the conversation." The message read. It stayed with me. He stared at the screen, then locked the phone and placed it on the dresser. Some things didn't need a reply. He turned off the light, closed the door quietly, and went to rest. The night outside moved on, unaware that something small but important had shifted in two very different lives. The morning came early like it always did. The single father woke before his alarm, as if his body had learned the rhythm of responsibility too well to forget it. He lay still for a moment, listening. The house was quiet. No coughing from the other room. No footsteps. Just the soft hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic starting its day. He got up carefully and went to his daughter's room. She was still asleep, her face relaxed, her breathing slow and even. He stood there longer than necessary, the way he often did, just to be sure she was okay. Then he closed the door gently and started his day. Coffee brewed. Lunch was packed. Shoes were lined up by the door. Nothing felt different, and yet something was across the city in a much larger house. The billionaire woke up to silence of another kind, the kind that echoed, the kind that didn't ask for breakfast or help with homework. Sunlight poured through tall windows onto furniture that looked perfect and untouched. He sat on the edge of his bed longer than usual. The conversation from the night before replayed in his mind, not in sharp pieces, but in steady waves. Calm words, a steady voice. No anger. He checked his phone. Messages, emails, missed calls, and notifications. A short video clip had started circulating. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no insults, just two men talking. One confident, one calm. The comment surprised him. People weren't mocking the father. They were praising him. The billionaire scrolled slowly. Words like dignity, real success, and respect appeared again and again. Some comments were thoughtful. Others were emotional. A few were harsh, aimed at him. He put the phone down. He didn't feel angry. He felt exposed. Meanwhile, the father dropped his daughter off at school. She hugged him tightly, as she always did. "You came home fast," she said. "I promised," he replied. She smiled and ran toward her friends. He stood there until she disappeared inside. At work, his day moved like any other. Packages loaded, addresses checked, long streets, traffic lights, the weight of boxes against his arms. He didn't mention the gala. He didn't mention the conversation. He didn't even think much about it until someone at a stop recognized him. "Hey," the man said cautiously. "Were you at that event last night?" The father paused. "Yes." "You spoke really well," the man said. That took courage. The father nodded, unsure how to respond. "I just spoke honestly." The man smiled. "That's rare." Word spread quietly. By afternoon, the video had reached places a father would never see. Offices, cafes, Living rooms. Parents watched it while their children did homework nearby. Some paused the video and stared at the screen, thinking about their own lives. The billionaire watched the numbers climb. Views, shares, comments. He attended meetings that day, but his attention drifted. He heard people talking, but his mind returned again and again to the same sentence. I have freedom. It just looks different. That evening, he drove instead of being driven. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He ended up in a quiet neighborhood. Small houses, parked cars, children playing on the sidewalk. He slowed down, watching a father help a child learn to ride a bike. The child fell. The father laughed gently and helped him up. The billionaire sat there longer than he expected. Back at home, the single father helped with homework, spelling words, math problems, reading aloud. Can you come to school on Friday? His daughter asked. For what? My presentation. She said, I want you there. He smiled. I'll be there. Later that night, after she fell asleep, he checked his phone. Messages from unknown numbers. Most were kind. Some were confusing. A few asked for interviews. He ignored them. He wasn't interested in attention. He was interested in sleep. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at his workplace, addressed to him, not an email, a letter. He opened it during his break. It was short, polite, an invitation to meet. No cameras, no press, just a conversation. He knew who it was from before he finished reading. That same day, the billionaire canceled 2 meetings. His assistant looked surprised, but didn't question it. When they met again, it wasn't in a ballroom. It was in a small, quiet room at the company's headquarters. No decorations, no audience. They sat across from each other. I watched the video, the billionaire said. So, did a lot of people, the father replied. I didn't like how I looked, the billionaire admitted. The father nodded. That happens to all of us sometimes. I wanted to understand you, the billionaire said. Not argue. The father listened. They talked about work, about pressure, about fear of falling behind, about children. The billionaire spoke about regret, though he didn't use a word, about choices that made sense at the time, about promises made and broken quietly. The father didn't judge. He didn't preach. He shared his own mistakes. Times he lost his temper. Days he wished he could give more. The room felt lighter as the conversation went on. At the end, the billionaire stood up. You change how I think, he said. I didn't try to, the father replied. I just live my life. The billionaire nodded. That's what makes it powerful. They shook hands. Outside, the world kept moving. The video continued to spread, but the father stopped paying attention. He focused on his daughter's presentation. He took the day off work. He sat in the front row. She looked at him when she finished and smiled, proud. That smile mattered more than anything else. That night, the billionaire sat alone again, but this time he made a call he had delayed for years. He didn't talk long, but he listened. Something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. And sometimes that's how real change begins. Life slowly returned to its normal pace, but it didn't feel the same anymore. For the single father, mornings were still early. Coffee still tasted a little too bitter. Traffic was still heavy. Bills still arrived on time. Nothing magical had changed on the surface. Yet inside, there was a quiet sense of peace he hadn't felt before. Not pride, not victory, just calm. He kept his routine steady. Wake up, make breakfast, walk his daughter to the bus stop when he could, work long hours, come home tired but present. People recognize him sometimes now, at the grocery store, at school, at work. Most only smiled. Some said, thank you. A few wanted to talk about the video. He listened politely, but never stayed long. I'm just doing what I've always done, he would say. And it was true. At his daughter's school, the teacher pulled him aside one afternoon. She talks about you a lot, the teacher said gently, about how you always show up. He swallowed hard and nodded. That night, as they ate dinner together, his daughter looked at him seriously. Why do people know you now? She asked. He smiled. Because sometimes adults forget what matters, and they need reminders. She thought about that, then nodded like it made sense. Across the city, the billionaire's days looked different too. He still ran companies, still signed papers, still made decisions that affected thousands of people. But something had shifted in how he moved through his world. He started leaving earlier. He canceled meetings that didn't matter. He listened more. One evening, he attended a small school event. No cameras, no speeches, just parents sitting on tiny chairs, clapping too loudly for children who were nervous and proud at the same time. He sat quietly in the back. He thought of the single father sitting in the front row at his daughter's presentation. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Weeks passed. The video slowly faded from headlines, replaced by new stories and louder moments. That was fine. Neither man wanted attention anymore. But the impact stayed. One afternoon, the single father received another message. Short, simple. I'd like to do something meaningful. Together, they met again quietly. This time, there was no tension. They talked about children who fell behind not because they lacked talent, but because no one had time for them. About single parents stretched too thin. About potential wasted quietly. The billionaire listened carefully. Then he acted. A new program was announced weeks later. No flashy names. No grand speeches. Just real support for families who needed flexibility, childcare help, and education resources. The single father didn't appear on stage. He didn't want to. He helped behind the scenes, offering practical advice, grounded in real life. What helped? What didn't? What mattered most? People noticed the difference. The program felt human. One evening, after a long day, the single father and his daughter sat on the couch together. She leaned against him. "Are you happy?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. He thought of the past years, the losses, the exhaustion, the fear, the moments he doubted himself. Then he thought of now. "Yes," he said softly. "I am." She smiled and closed her eyes. In another home, the billionaire stood in his kitchen, helping with dishes. It felt awkward, slow, real. He laughed quietly at himself. This was harder than any deal he had ever closed, and somehow more rewarding. Months later, the single father received a letter, handwritten. It thanked him, not for the words, but for the example. He folded the letter and placed it in a drawer with other important things. School drawings, old photos, notes his daughter had left him over the years. He didn't frame it. He didn't need to. On a warm afternoon, he stood watching his daughter play, laughing freely. He felt tired but full. Nearby, other parents watched too. Some wealthy, some struggling, all equal in that moment. The single father didn't think about the ballroom anymore. The billionaire didn't think about winning arguments anymore. Both men had learned something important. That real success doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It shows up every day in small, quiet ways. And sometimes the most powerful reply isn't spoken at all. It's lived.